Oh, you wanted reffing down here, by the way?
Yeah.
We now have reffing down here because he's in his what's the mug this morning, Bart?
Good morning, Baltimore.
Good morning, Baltimore.
The musical Hairspray.
It's from Hairspray. Now that Bart has moved folks into the Georgia College and State University, he's back in Studio Bart. And Jarrett had questions involving reffing down here.
Ooh, okay.
And so, Jarrett, go for it. Since we have withheld reffing down here until a stable environment. Go with your reffing down here questions, and we'll go ahead and start with that before we get into Vlatko.
So I want to ask about the Nashville goal disallowed because because Jason and I have talked about it ad nauseum before about the idea of how do you decide the impact of of a player being quote unquote offside and impacting the play.
That's a tough one because I think with VAR, we're seeing that this call continues to come up, and it continues to look different every single time that it's interpreted. And I personally did not think that Nashville goal was offside. I don't think that they got in the view of the goalkeeper to a point that, especially that it altered their ability to save it. It was a very fleeting moment. I don't ever think that he really crossed the line of sight of the goalkeeper to the point where it was really that impactful. But I'm with you, and Jason and I have also had this conversation where it's really frustrating that we don't know what exactly, impeding or, infringing in that instance is. I don't know, Jarrett. I don't know.
but that's why I wanted to ask you about it, because to your point, it feels like we're always just guessing, man. Hey, what is the ref gonna roll the dice and if it clears 15, it clears the dexterity check?
It does feel that way because especially with the Nashville goal, I mean, we've seen it where it's pretty obvious where there's a player in front of a goalkeeper and you're like, okay, yeah, maybe they didn't do a whole lot, but they're right in front of the goalkeeper or they're very much in the line of sight, or you can see where they distracted or was in the way of the goalkeeper. This one, again, I don't know. I don't know. And they really do need to I feel like they need to come up with a better kind of checklist for referees in the VAR setting to identify what does interfering with a goalkeeper or impeding a goalkeeper's progress or whatever you want to call it. What does that mean? That I think would be a good step at this point because there are too many cases where the referees, the VAR, they're kind of not guessing, but they're making up interpretations as we go.
So how many folks lit up your timeline during that particular moment and were wondering about, what's going on here? Well, if Muil is moving and impacting peripheral vision, or did the keeper start his move early and all these kinds of things? I mean, how was this number one for you in reffing down here when this moment happened?
This week was definitely was the most obvious one we're talking about. I will caveat this by saying that unfortunately they didn't go to win, but anytime Nashville has some sort of referee decision go against them, I think it's a good call. So that was kind of my thought process was, well, it happened in Nashville, so good. But
I was cackling when it happened. I'm not gonna lie.
Right? Yeah. Especially because it was such a good goal.
Also, I have not liked Alex Muil going back to his New York Red Bulls days because he still has a lot of Red Bull in him, and it annoys me. And then he just for no reason jumps up and like a sea lion reaching up for a horn at SeaWorld and then just misses. It was so weird. Yeah, it was so weird, and I wanted to get your opinion because it's divisive all the time.
I don't think it and also as a goalkeeper, I don't think that interfered with the goalkeeper's ability to save the shot. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
100%.
I don't know. I mean, I guess what they're saying, and this is where I will try to do my Christine uncle and defend the referees a little bit. And it definitely was an attempt to play. It wasn't like they just ran in front of the goalkeeper, right? Or they were just standing there. The attacker made an attempt to actually make a play on the ball, which was in flight, which the goalkeeper was going to have to save. My thought process was the goalkeeper was already trying to make the save. Right. So I don't really think that they were going to – I don't think a header from an attacker was going to somehow alter the unless they're Superman and can literally fly and change direction in air. I don't think that was going to affect their ability to save it or not.
Okay, then there are two other incidents, and they're both Leagues Cupian that I wanted to get to before we get into Vlatko. And I want to advance that story. I mean, we're like I said, we're on the under the understanding that he is going to have a public resignation put forth on all the media that is social, and we'll get to that. We know that that's coming. So, two other moments. One is in Nashville. In and of itself, but it's the Club America match. The end of the Club America match before we had the end of the Club America match. And it has to do with reffing and being in control of a situation and having all of the chaos going on around you. And we haven't gotten the true explanation of, okay, Jack Mayer's shot is saved, and all of that, and then you end up with 5 minutes, and then you end up with a re-kick, and you end up with chaos and 18 to 20 arrests and a non-contact injury with security. Now that you've had time to kind of ingest that moment as well, when you look back at that, we still don't have a whole lot of the details as to the 5-minute delay.
Yeah. So I think what bothers me is, to your point, John, I think there could have been an element of hold the players. We don't want people to get hurt. There are people running under the field, safety. But I think what would have prevented that is you should have, and this is why I'm confused about the process, because you have a penalty kick shootout. I mean, we saw this in the Women's World Cup this past week. A goalkeeper makes a save. The immediate response should be, okay, yeah, we're good here on the field. Hold up. Let's make sure we're good up top. It shouldn't take years, because that is an almost instantaneous check. You know, you go through and you go, okay, let's get it. So I'm wondering now, was there a delay in the VAR room even being able to view the feed? I don't know. Because to me, that is a fairly it shouldn't take more than 10 seconds for them to go, yeah, we got to check this. Okay, we're checking it. Yeah, he's off the line. The whole process should take 30 seconds. And at that point, it should also signal to both teams like, hey, we're not done here. Like, we got to make sure. And that's also a little bit on the teams for not understanding that. They should also be aware that during a penalty kick shootout, you do need to make sure that the goalkeeper wasn't off their line. But that to me was interesting, because the delay, I think, in stating that they were checking things almost made the situation worse, rather than waiting for the bad situation of the field invaders to die down before even doing the check. They got the whole process wrong. I don't have any insight. I don't know why it took so long. That I think that's why I'm confused too, John. Because it shouldn't. The process is very linear. You take the kick. The goalkeeper saves the kick. The referee and the AR look at each other and go, well, I think we're good. I'm also questioning why the assistant wasn't able to be like, I don't know. I think he was off his line, because it was pretty clear that he was about 6 inches off his line when the ball was even kicked,
Right.
And then it felt like one where you catch it in like that. It wasn't like he just barely came off, man. I felt like that should have been one you get in the moment.
I agree. And that was, I think for me, Jarrett, that was why I was so frustrated. It was like, yeah, he's clearly off his line. So what is the assistant referee doing on the side? Like that's his one job, So you have the ability to say, nah, let's put your flag up and go, he was off his line. And at that point, you can check it, and be like, okay, no, he wasn't. You go, sorry, my bad. Even though we would have been right in that situation. So I think their delay actually made the situation worse. That was just I think the referees got a little too excited and caught up in the moment.
Well, and my other Leagues Cupian point is just the implementation of VAR and its inconsistency in the tournament, because you go to the Mukhtar Mawil moment, and then on the other side, you have the McNaughton, really what should have been a penalty, and VAR had it right there, and they didn't give McNaughton a penalty and let it go. And I think that as we go forward in Leagues Cup, the implementation of VAR and those who are in charge of VAR and who are VARs, this really has to be fine-tuned in this tournament going forward.
Well, I will say, I think one of the issues is we're not using just MLS and Liga MX officials. These are CONCACAF officials. That's something that CONCACAF wanted, and I agree with, right? On the whole, they wanted to get more CONCACAF officials involved because these are just much higher level games than even a lot of the CCL games, right? Or Champions Cup, whatever the hell we're calling it at this point in time. CONCACAF Tournament of Champions for Champions.
The CONCACAF Champions League Hemispheric Extravaganza.
Yeah. The Champions Extravaganza of Champions Cups.
Yes.
I think that's one of the issues too, is you just have too many inconsistencies with refereeing. And again, I think that maybe you're going to have to deal with some growing pains when it comes to refereeing to get refereeing better. And this is a little bit one of those growing pains, because you just have a lot of officials who on the field are different than your VAR crew or are different from each other even on the field. And I think that is a little too much inconsistency, because when you go to like a CONCACAF, like a Gold Cup competition, right? CONCACAF picks those referees, trains those referees a little bit before the tournament. I don't know what that process would have been before Leagues Cup, because it is kind of a, spur of the moment. It's not like you have a break before Leagues Cup the same way you do like a Gold Cup, right? Like teams have a whole week or two training camp. The referees get in, they're pulled from, I don't know what that process was for Leagues Cup. I don't think it was very long, especially because you have MLS officials and others who, may have been in season. So I just think that you're going to have some growing pains, but the problem is that it's been with process implementations, not necessarily calls on the field. And I know you can always get mad at calls on the field, and those are not fixable, but part of sport. You're just going to have a referee make a bad call. It's they didn't get this process right, or they didn't go through the list of things that they're supposed to go through on that checklist correct. And that, to me, I mean, again, going back to the Nashville penalty kick shootout, that was a process problem. Not a did you get the call right or not problem. That was a process problem. And those are the things that you want to try to eliminate in refereeing circles, because that makes the game it's a better managed game.
All right, let's spin.
Before you ask a question, John, I have a question for you.
Okay, well, go ahead and
I don't know if I've noticed this T-shirt before. Alderson brought us.
Yeah, it is new to the stacks, and it is a salute to those who are the dearly departed. Considering,
Philippi's a cute little town.
What is going on currently at Alderson Broadus, for those who are not aware, is that the university lost its accreditation, and so this close to athletic seasons, you now have athletes for a D3 school. I think they're D3 that D2. Are now D2. Now they're looking for new homes, and so I have both the football T-shirt and the soccer T-shirt for Alderson Broadus to show respect for the dearly departed.
When I was at WVU, I played on our men's club volleyball team, and we would scrimmage the AB men's volleyball team a lot. Lenore Ryan played Alderson Broadus down there. Really nice football stadium for a D2 program. Yeah. And then, yeah, it was sad to hear. I mean, West Virginia's going through a bunch of problems from a university standpoint as well. But yeah.
No, but yes, no, I you know me, I am the patron saint of lost causes and the little guy. So any chance I get to wear anything that is a silent recognition or protest, I'm going to do. Before we get into Vlatko, and I want to advance
Vlatko.
Before we get into, I want to advance that story because we've had the discussions about what he is ultimately responsible for and all that. Interview came out in and around Serena Wiegmann, and Chloe Morgan over at The Athletic got to sit down with Mark Bullingham, the chief executive of the FA, and women's technical director Kay Cossington in Australia. And obviously part of the discussion involving Serena Wiegmann is, hey, can we buy her out and get her over here as quickly as humanly possible? And apparently she's under contract until 2025 and, allegedly, possibly, probably, maybe, we think. So the question was involving Serena Wiegmann's salary and parity, 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 with men's manager Gareth Southgate. Bullingham, quote, if you look at the disparity in the market and the income coming in, that's why you have a difference. We don't talk about people's remuneration. Serena is, within the market she operates, well paid. If you look at the comparison in the men's game, it's a different market. I really want those markets to merge over time where you've got to go, but we're not there yet. We look at the gap between the men's and women's players and what they're paid. The average annual salary in the WSL is less than the average salary in the Premier League for a week. We have brilliant football being played by the Lionesses and actually all the teams in this tournament, and I think they're showing that there's demand for that. That, meaning pay parity, is the long-term objective and where you've got to get. We are a not-for-profit, and every decision we make has a consequential impact. So if we take money from one area, then it has to come from another. I want to continue building up her salary for sure, and that's the long-term objective. But if you were to do that now, you'd have to be taking money from somewhere else.
Yeah. So I think this is the unfortunate reality that when we talk about, it's the unfortunate reality when we talk about equal pay when it comes to men's versus women's is they want to fall back on the market price. And unfortunately, that is a valid reason for them to not, it's not a good reason, but it is valid. That said, Vlatko, we know, was at about 500-ish a year. And I think that probably would have been on the high end, obviously, this year for being at the World Cup. I don't think he got too many bonuses because we only got one round of knockouts. But we know that Vlatko is around 500,000, which doesn't sound like a lot, but that's actually a decent salary for a women's soccer coach, both professionally and at the national team level. We've had this conversation with Berhalter where we know that national team managers tend to make less than club managers for a lot of reasons, one of those being that their duties are less. But in the women's game, it's a valid reason or a valid claim that the national team manager is actually a little bit more important and busy than on the men's side because of the importance that women's football, international football, has to the season, if you will, of women's soccer, especially globally, right? I think a lot more people pay attention to the women's national team breaks than they would the women's club, seasons. And that's because the club game is behind the national spotlight, if you will.
Right.
But yeah, Wiegmann's going to cost a lot of money. Let's just put it that way. I mean, she's going to cost a lot of money. I agree that we'd like to get those salaries closer. I'd love to know what Hervé Renard was making because that's a good kind of a good case study, right? He was just at a men's World Cup. Now, granted, he was being employed by the Saudis, and they just throw money at everything. But, his salary wasn't at the top end. I think he was in the top 10 or 15. But if we know that, like, for example, Greg Berhalter's at 1.8 on the high end, and we know that Vlatko's at 5.5 of 100,000 at his high end, that's a gap, and those are the women's national team. The U.S. women's national team is a much more high profile job than the men's national team. I'm just one of those, brings in way more money, which we have seen that's true. That brings in more money. It's definitely a more important job. You're talking about a team that's won 4 World Cups, 3 gold medals. So I don't know how we get them to come together, because at the end of the day, also, money is a scarce resource. And a lot of these FAs that barely want to pay the women's players are not going to step up and pay their coaches all that much more money. Right. So that is, it's just an interesting discussion about all of this, John, because it's not just about buying out her contract. It's then, what are you going to pay her? Mm-hmm. Because she's not going to leave if you're not paying her a significant amount more. If it's, let's just say if she's at 500,000 and you're like, we'll give you 6. Is that enough to get her from the best team in the world right now? I mean, no. I don't know.
No, I think you're gonna have to set a precedent. If you're going to chase after Serena Wiegmann, you're going to have to set a precedent in international soccer on the women's side if you're going to bring her over. Because first off, you got to buy her out, unless she's going to claim breach because of markers that were allegedly set. And so far, do we know if they've been met when it comes to bonuses, getting paid, and taking care of your players? If that doesn't happen, is that breach? Can she jet, or is she under contract through 25? Right. Is she bought out? You know that some corporate folks will cut a check in a heartbeat. All you got to do is talk to Jimmy Rain down at Yellowwood, and he'll cut a check for something in the Southeastern Conference involving Auburn like that. If you had a soccer version of Jimmy Rain to bring in Serena Wiegmann, you know that they would do it.
Yeah.
So we've got to keep an eye on Serena Wiegmann. Now, to move the story forward on Vlatko, which is going to be the new headline, I guess, or the hashtag. At least we're creating it here anyway. Who are you looking at outside of Serena Wiegmann that should be considered? That it's either, obviously, and you can do this with tiers or however you want to do it. Ones that you've got to look at, bar none.
Yeah.
Who's below the radar that you can take a flyer on? That kind of stuff, because then you've got to get into player decisions and what you want to do philosophically, how you're going to build with the younger talent that's there. How much of the veterans do you sit there and say, thanks for your time, cut the hard times promo and here's your pocket watch, that kind of stuff. Who are you looking at now once Vlatko becomes official?
Well, let me kind of set my criteria and a little bit of the process that I think we need to be aware of, because everyone wants to throw out names, and let's set criteria first, right? Personally, I would love a manager who has international experience. I think that was the biggest flaw in hiring Vlatko. And I also want to make sure that people remember, hiring Vlatko at the time was a good decision.
Yeah.
People were very on board. He turned out to be very bad at a tough job. Okay. I think hiring a manager who has international managerial experience will be very helpful. You don't have them learning on the job of how to be an international manager. You don't have them trying to figure out and mesh their club mentality with the national team, because we know they're different, John. We've had that conversation ad nauseum as well. So that's kind of what I'm looking at. I know some people are like very staunchly, they want men's versus women. It doesn't need to be a male or female. I don't think it's as important. But I would like someone who has been coaching in women's soccer as well. So to me, that kind of is those are my criteria. You have been a women's soccer coach and you have some international experience. So my list is a little different than others. I do like the idea of interviewing Laura Harvey. I'm not convinced that Laura Harvey is a drastically different coach than Vlatko. She does have international managerial experience, but only at the youth level. she's someone who a lot of fans like, but the problem that I do have sometimes with women's soccer fans is they don't necessarily always want to hire someone for being the best choice, but they just hire them. They want them to be considered because they like them, which is fine. So I would interview Laura Harvey.
Okay.
I don't know if she would be my choice. The other ones that I would interview, one who is also currently coaching in NWSL is Mark Parsons. Obviously, his time with the Netherlands didn't go all that well, but I think that he could take the lessons, hopefully, that he learned from that and apply them to the women's national team here. I also think, as we found, the Dutch are weird, and the fact that the Dutch only like to do Dutch things. And when you bring in a non-Dutch person, they get very, weird.
Mm-hmm.
That would be, that's the thing. But I think Mark Parsons would be an interesting one to consider for the U.S. job. He obviously has international experience. He's a very good women's club coach. Another one that I want to, this is my wild card, okay? This is my wild card.
All right.
Desiree Ellis from South Africa.
Okay.
She's been with that program for a long time. She has built them into a very strong program, which the U.S. women are. She's done a lot of that work for South Africa to get to the level that they are. Obviously, they get to the round of 16. I hate to say they outperformed expectations, mainly because I also expected them to get out of the group. But I think that they outperformed what most people would have thought they would have played like. They weren't just a, defensive, oh my gosh, I hope we don't concede a goal. They weren't, packing it in. They were a counterattacking team, but that's because that made sense for the talent they had. And again, that's where we need to, we have a lot of talent. I would like to see if she could evolve that to a much more forward pressing type of game. But she has club managerial experience, but she's been managing at the international level for a long time. I don't know if she would want to leave South Africa for a lot of legitimate reasons. It's her homeland. That's, she was a founding member of that women's national team. She has nurtured the Banyana program for a decade almost. But I think that would be an interesting point because John, I think you and I have had conversations about this before where managing at the international level is not as much tactics as it is clearly communicating your ideas, keeping a good locker room, setting them up to succeed. And where did Vlatko go wrong in that is I think he had just had bad tactics, maybe too complicated. I don't know, but he clearly didn't communicate. He didn't clearly communicate whatever he wanted them to do because they didn't look like they were doing it at all. It's not like Jill Ellis had great tactics. Like that's the other thing,
But she managed players well in her last World Cup, where a lot of folks were sitting there thinking, okay, this roster might be a little outgunned.
Exactly.
But she knew what to do in a tournament situation against each team and navigated their way to another title.
And that's where obviously Vlatko failed. Is that I mean, obviously the players liked him. I mean, I think that's the biggest thing we're hearing is the players really do like Vlatko. But yeah, I mean, I think that's the thing is like Jill Ellis wasn't a brilliant tactician. She set up her team and she said, all right, go play. But yeah, she managed the team well. And I would like to, I'd like someone who could do that. Again, Desiree Ellis is my wild card. I think that she would be an interesting pick. Again, she has a lot of international experience. She's been around the women's game for her entire life. So that'd be a very interesting choice. But I do want to cut out some names, right? Emma Hayes, not happening. Just stop. Look, she I think she's said as much. She's very happy at Chelsea. She's getting paid a lot at Chelsea to win a lot of games.
Yeah.
I don't think Jesse Marsch is a good decision either. He hasn't. I'm not saying you have to have coached women's soccer, but his name keeps coming up in all these articles, and it's just like, stop. The other one I do want to eliminate right now, and I see Abby's got it. I don't know if Brandy Chastain is the answer now.
I think he's too busy being an owner. I think, more than anything.
Well, there's that right now too. But that brings me to kind of the problem with this whole search is in the U.S., we have to do a better job, not only just coaching education in general, because we suck at that, but we have got to do a better job of getting former women's national team players involved with coaching. Because if you say that the women's national team program, and this is you pass down the culture, you pass down this, it's something that you just get when you come in. Why not have former women's national team players involved at the U15 level and up, so that they're teaching these next generation of girls what it means to be a USWNTer, right? What it means to be in that group of iconic, legendary women. And that was what I took from that Brandi Chastain interview is, I don't think she was asking to just be handed a job coaching the youth national teams. I think she wants to be involved. And the fact that Brandi Chastain, who, yes, has an A license, is, in my opinion, the owner of the most iconic moment in U.S. soccer history, perhaps U.S. sports history. It's up there. Yeah. Why is she not involved with your youth national team programs at all? And it's something that I think there's a lot of reasons why those women didn't get into coaching earlier, or why they just didn't get into it at all. Money is, when you spend your entire 20s and 30s not making a lot of money, you got to make money somehow. Mm-hmm. But now that you have more money in the game, you have coaches getting paid better, both at club and then internationally. It's not an unlucrative spot to be in. And I'm concerned that we're not getting enough former women's national team players into coaching ranks. I mean, you look at a lot of these. Serena Wiegmann is a great example of someone who played internationally at the very early days and is now a very good coach. You look at Sylvia Neid. She didn't do well this tournament, but Boss Tecklenburg, Pia Sundhage, these are former great players. Hege Rees, that went on to manage their national teams. And you have a 4-time world champion, a 3-time gold medalist program. You have tons of championship teams to choose from. And yet we haven't had a former women's team player coach them since April Heinrichs in 2000. That to me is a big red flag and a big black mark on U.S. soccer. So why the fact that Brandi Chastain feels that the only way she can be involved is by owning a team? That's sad. That's really sad.
Susie Rack over at The Guardian says the FA insists it will 100% reject any offers for Serena Wiegmann amid a U.S. vacancy. No real surprise, but of course.
Yeah, they don't want to give the best coach in women's soccer to the best program. I mean, because again, this is where people don't want to. People from the outside want to keep telling, "Oh, the world's caught up to the U.S." Yeah, because they have Serena Wiegmann. They have great coaching. The U.S. is so far behind in the coaching department. You give the best coach to the best pool of players, the deepest pool of players, the most athletic and talented. You ain't winning the next World Cup. I mean, that's the thing,
Uh-huh. You need to chase after your allergies, sir.
I know. Actually, you know what it is? It's a lot of emotions yesterday.
No doubt about it. Yep, no doubt about it. We know about puffy eyes and sinuses. So we're right there with you. At Bartimus Prime 19 at SoccerForUSPod.